you know, when we came here, there was a huge fellowship, and our children were so blessed that they were brought up and they could go to Pathfinders, Sunday school, Pathfinders, fellowship, and this carried on right until they became past being teenage years. And it was a great grounding. We had wonderful leaders here and very, very good ministers at times. But it gave them a wonderful grounding, and I can see it in my children now. You know, they have the same, moral fibre perhaps, if you put it like that. But it was just great. I mean, Richard was 6 months old, and when we came here, the fellowship was about 100 and something. And I never saw him throughout the whole service. Every time we came to church, he was taken off somewhere and he was handed back when it was time to go home. And then we of course, we had Bruce as well. And I mean, we had wonderful picnics. We had, there's just so much of the life of this church, and which we don't have now, which is unfortunate. But I think, you know, we're moving, changing, evolving, and hopefully growing.
So there was something when you were younger and when you had young children.
Yes.
There was very family sort of friendly.
Oh yes, absolutely, yes. It was just we were here constantly, and because my husband was a carpenter, he did a lot of work in the church, and all the front where the choir stalls all was built by him and everything. So. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So, yes, and as I say, you know, when I saw the donkey's head, it reminded me of the Christmas plays every year. It was June Little and Helen Toole and myself would do it, and we used every single person in the congregation if we could, and sometimes the other congregations, because we had have fill-ins. But it was just wonderful, and I think that you know, it was all done by the grace of God, for God.
Were those plays, were they things that people from the wider community came to?
Yes, the church was jam-packed, just absolutely jam-packed. We could never have enough room, and luckily they didn't know the mistakes that was going on, but it didn't matter. They were all Christian-centred playlets, you know, and so we involved the choir sang first. The Sunday school had their little bit. Every single person in the church was used, and we were all dressed up as shepherds and what have you. And I would say that was one of the highlights of this church. Holland Park said they would sponsor us, so that's the story. Yeah. And met us at the airport in April 1967. 1967. And yes, so I've been here 54 years. But they had a flat ready for us at Annerley, a job for my husband. And then, of course, the day we came to St David's First, which was a Presbyterian church then, it was just amazing. You know, we met so many lovely people, and a lot of them are still here. And of course, they have become my family in place of my family in Scotland. And that's just the crux of it, really. And it's just remained so. We've just had a wonderful time here, ups and downs, like every church has. But the things we've done are just amazing, I think. Our women's group, the young women's and the guild, were just very, very active, and always raising money for charity. With the street stalls. The flower show here was known far and wide. We had it once a year. Garage sales, mannequin parades, we had everything. And
tell me about the mannequin parades.
Well, our dear friend Joy Scott, who is past now, she was a very lovely little lady, and she would have us all teed up for the fashion parade. You know, we had to be the models. It was just fantastic. She had even men wearing dinner suits to escort the ladies onto the stage here. Yes, we just had a lovely time. And of course we had a lovely time going and trying on the dresses that we were to wear. But and the thing that brings the most fun memories, we always took part in our concerts, which all the churches around about took part in, and we had it at Holland Park Central. And of course, practicing practicing for these plays were just hilarious. And I always remember when we got, I think we had it at the Baptist one year, and Heather, I think, fell through the glass windows behind us. But it was mighty, because it was just wonderful to be with people our own, church family, church people. And then, of course, came the 74 floods. And honestly, I do think that was when the rubber met the road, because we had to, well, we didn't have to, but we did. By the time we got here on the Sunday morning, people were already arriving with clothing which had been asking for. And my husband and I spent all day filling the station wagon full of clothes and taking it to City Hall, all day until the water was lapping the freeway and we could no longer go. So we had to come back over the Story Bridge, and that's where we saw that huge ship, something Miller, had swung round in the river and blocked the river to shipping. Anyway, after that, of course, it was clean-up. So I went with a team to somewhere at Cooper's Plains, and I don't think I've ever forgotten the most horrible smell of that mud as we hosed it from these poor people's homes, and them sitting on the steps in absolute shock that this has happened to them. I've never ever forgotten that. And it was so wonderful. We took home all their horrible clothes. My neighbours would wash them, and 2 days later I got them back, clean and ready to go back to them. And this was happening, by many members of the congregation. My husband went with Heather Toy's husband, Bob, with his boat at Fairfield. They had a bit of a trouble this time because they forgot to put the bung in the boat and the water was coming in. However, they righted that, and then they went to the people at Fairfield and cleaned up and everything. And then the army arrived and gave them all tetanus injections. So, so it to me was really, really giving to the community and being with the community when they needed us the most. And I'm not saying that our street stalls and our flower show and everything and all the money we gave to charities are not important, but I just felt we were actually involved with the community, more involved than just handing the money out to anyone who needed it.
You had some personal connection, personal relationship, personal interaction
with the people. Yes, well, the people were just so shocked. I can just remember you could hardly get a word out of them because they were traumatized. I mean, how would you like it if somebody came to your house and started hosing it inside with a hose and in this filthy mud, and everything you had was thrown out on the pavement to be collected? It's always stuck with me. I thought, I know the 2011 floods we didn't help because I'm a bit older now, but I noticed a lot of people did the same thing. The Mud Army, they call them, and I'm so pleased that the Brisbaneites are like that,
What was the effect that you noticed on St David's by being involved in that activity in the 74
Yes,
floods?
well, I think it brought us closer because everybody had a job to do. If they couldn't go to the houses to hose and clean up or throw the stuff out or whatever, they could do the washing, or they could bring the clothes here and we dispatched them to somebody who needed them. And I just felt the whole church must have felt the same as me. It was a real Christian thing to do, but just really being in the thick of it, in the mud, so to speak.
Getting our hands dirty.
Getting our hands dirty, yes, yeah. So, yeah, it was wonderful to come here. I'm sure God led us here to St David's, Holland Park, because, it's just been my second family. Because you leave all your family at home, and it's just nice to know that you've got someone here, and all the ups and downs of life, you've always got the church. It's always here. Your friends stick by you. You can cry, laugh, do everything with them, really. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What when you think about the next 5-10 years for Southside because St David's became part of Holland Park Uniting Church, and
Yes.
now it's part of Southside. What would be a hope that you would have for Southside as you sort of touch on some of these things?
My hope is that our congregation is the same caring, loving, friendly congregation that I feel we've always been. And it's very sad to see all our folks getting older and moving on to either aged care or dying. And I just think, the care and consideration and the loving kindness is always here. I think when people come in, especially we get people from, the park and homeless people coming in. I know that Laurel particularly is very good at talking to people like that, and I should hope that we would give them a sense of caring, and we could maybe help them. Can't help them with money, of course, but we can put them somewhere that can help. And I think that's the essence of a good congregation, I think, to be joined with the community in as much as you know what's going on around you. And that's why I think the op shop may be a very good thing, and the little coffee shop and what have you. Although we've had to give up our hall, well, there's other benefits, isn't there?
What benefits do you see coming out?
Well, I see people coming in here and gradually will get to know, but they'll also know they can have a cup of coffee, and I'm sure there will be people here happy to talk to them, but they won't be standing with a Bible in their hand. And it's like a pastoral care. It's like what Esteban does a lot with his folk, and I just think you just go slowly. I'm not saying we will get people to come to the church, but if they come here and talk, at least we're making a communication of some kind.
What's your hope for through Southside that Southside might be able to do for either for families or to make space for families?
Well, it was a very sad day when we had to ask our 2 families with smaller children to move on to Mount Gravatt because they had Sunday schools and everything, and ours was just getting less and less people, and we felt those children needed to be thought about. And so we said, no, move on. We will miss you terribly, but for the sake of the children, please go. And so I would really like to see that, that our children are being taught in Sunday school and given everything that my children were given, which is a wonderful thing. And that's my hope. Yeah, that's the sad thing. Our mission, we had a mission committee, and so there was always we were always being told about people overseas and what have you, and we have had our own missionaries, as you know, and I think that was sad when that had to close, and then the guild closed, then the young women's closed because we're no longer young women, we're old women, but that's been the saddest part, I think. And that's why I think we've become closer as friends, and maybe people look at us and think, oh yeah, well, there's nothing going on there, there's no Bible study, there's no this, there's no that. But just remember where we've come from. And it was not easy to shut down these things.
So there's a heritage. It's a heritage,
yes,
you would say,
it is.
St David. It's not necessarily, it's perhaps a little dormant at the moment.
Yes, but in here it's still there, I think, in our congregation for sure.
And what is it? Tell me about the passion of that. What as you think about that maybe we're not quite seeing just yet, but what could it become, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think I know there's still a women's group and you can go to it if you want, but the thing that worries me is that so many of us are now getting to the age that we're not allowed to drive, can't drive. And even somebody said to me the other day, but Hilda, if they have 4 churches at Willard Hill, how are we going to get there? I said, well, you know, perhaps it could be considered down the line, maybe a little bus or something, that we could all go to that. And I'm not saying shut here, please don't, but I think they do see the inevitability of it in the future when you're talking to folk. Do they say that to you?
No.
No. But I think they do see the inevitability of it. Much as they would all like to have their funeral from this church, it may not happen.
Yeah.
And
but for the foreseeable future, there will certainly be some ministry and mission, like at
Yes.
the Salt Shop, that we're
yes, that's right.
we're dreaming about. The kids to see behind
well,
you.
like as I said, L'Oreal's good at talking to people, and so we must utilise the people we have, and people who are willing, and people who are good at these things.